Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's webcast on Making Workplace Wellbeing a Culture Win. This program is part of SHRM's webcast series. You can see a list of available and upcoming events at www.shrm.org/webcast. SHRM would like to thank today's program sponsor, Limeade, for helping make today's webcast available to the HR community. And now a bit about today's program. The key to building a successful workplace wellness program is enabling employees to participate in activities that authentically reflect your core values and business goals. Today's program will discuss effective ways to define and assess corporate culture and engage your employees in growing it. We're pleased to welcome Megan M. Biro to lead today's program. Ms. Biro is a globally recognized talent management and HR tech strategist, digital catalyst, author, and speaker. As founder and CEO of Talent Culture and host of the weekly Twitter chat and podcast Work Trends, she's worked with hundreds of companies, from early-stage ventures to global brands like Microsoft, IBM, and Google, along with many startups, helping them recruit and empower stellar talent. We have a full room and a full agenda, so with introductions complete, I'm pleased now to turn over the webcast microphone to our speaker for today, Ms. Megan M. Biro.
Well, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here talking about all things wellness and workplace culture. Here's an overview of what we're going to cover today in the presentation. Workplace well-being, what is it? We're going to discuss definitions, facts, and statistics. We will address culture, the way an organization feels, its personality, which I think is rather interesting. We're also going to discuss some tools. We're going to look at the importance of analytics and the critical nature of leadership in making sure the entire initiative is impactful. And then we're going to go through some steps for tying wellness into the culture of an organization that is authentic. Then we're going to open it up to some Q&A. Sound like a good plan, everybody? Thanks for being here with me and the team here at Limeade. I'm excited. So I think I'm going to turn this over to Mike for a moment. I think we want to poll you. We're a little curious what's on your mind today.
Thank you. And yes, we do have a poll for our audience members to participate in, and we're going to push it on the screen right now. We want to know, in your opinion, what does your organization have in place? Is it a successful well-being program, a brand new well-being program, a successful wellness program, a brand new wellness program, or are you in the process of researching these types of programs, or do you have none of these in place and it's not really on your radar? Take a moment, think about those choices. We have a huge crowd with us today, so I'm going to give everybody a few seconds to vote, but we congratulate you on voting quickly. It looks like we've already got about 60% of our audience submitting their take on this. Take a look at how everybody in the room voted today. It looks like the leading choice for about almost a third of our audience today says they're in the process of researching these type of programs. About 24% indicate that they have a successful wellness program. Another 15% say they have a brand new wellness program. About 7% have a successful well-being program, with about another 5% saying they've got a brand new well-being program. And it looks like about 17% say they have nothing and it's not on their radars.
Wow. Well, those are some pretty interesting stats that came in. I'm impressed with how many of you actually have a plan in place. And, of course, research is going to be part of that process. So let's talk a little bit right now about workplace wellness, because it's not outdated. I don't think it's an outdated term, in my opinion. The world is headed towards a more holistic approach with the understanding that people require more than just physical health. It's really not that simple right now. There's many models that make a lot of sense in defining what holistic well-being encompasses. Here I want to kind of go over Limeade's well-being model, which includes all of these things: work, health risk, reaching potential, emotional, physical, and capacity for change. I think all of these are within the macro culture in which we live, right? But it can be applied to the culture of an organization, which I find really, really timely and interesting. So workplace well-being and facts and stats. Certainly it's something that I want to bring you through right now, right? So whether this data is new to you or not, it's a great way for us to set the stage for why we're here. For one reason or another, we're all advocates of well-being in the workplace, right? Many of us are in positions where we can set the stage for a happier, healthier, and a more fulfilled workforce. And all of us, each and every one of you out there, can be beneficiaries of this type of thinking, because I really do think we're talking about mindset here. The one thing I want us all to remember right now is that the whole person matters, right? I think this is an important message. Whether you're talking about wellness or culture, we're talking about both today, actually. If we can begin building any culture of wellness by addressing the negative impacts of stress and being overt about minimizing stress, we're off to a good start. Research by the Journal of the American Medical Association states that 60% of all illness and disease is caused by stress, and 80% of doctor visits are due to stress. Life is stressful, we all know that, but work is a major contributing factor to stress, and we're in a position to take a very interesting and hard look right now at how we can culturally make shifts to bring these numbers down and make you healthier and happier by hopefully kicking that stress to the curb. All right. I think we need to also have a reality check right now. It's never going to go away completely, right? But let's give it a good, solid shove out of the workplace, shall we? I think we should try that today. So these statistics speak volumes about the interconnectedness of engagement and well-being. And engagement is the key to a productive workforce, right? When your employees feel their employer cares about their well-being, they're 38% more engaged. Research shows that engagement predicted well-being above and beyond anything else. So I want everybody to remember that. Employees with a strong well-being are more than twice as likely as those who have an inconsistent well-being to be engaged in their jobs. Companies with a higher employee engagement rate are 78% more profitable, 78% more productive, and 5 times less likely to have an accident. So those are pretty important stats. Definitely something that is very important for us to keep in mind. And again, I don't want you all to think that this is just a touchy-feely message about caring about your employees and they're going to work harder and better. That's kind of old and tired, right? But we do have some anecdotal evidence that's important. So that's what I want to bring up today, that we can supplement with stories and some pretty powerful facts. I'm all about data, as many of you may know if you follow any of my content or my events. Data is really, really powerful, and you're going to see some data unfold today that I think will give you a sense of the fact that this is really, really powerful stuff. So Gallup continuously does research on employee engagement. They correlate it with business metrics that typically make sense, right? So here's a few key data points that I find interesting. Compared to those who are unengaged or less engaged, they have 70% fewer missed work days because of poor health over a course of a year. 59% are less likely to look for a job with a different organization in the next 12 months. And 42% are more likely to evaluate overall lives highly. 27% are more likely to report excellent performance by their organization. And 19% are more likely to volunteer in the past month, which I think is a cultural marker we can dig into at another time, but I think it's interesting to know. So let's talk for a moment about those unhappy, unhealthy employees, right? Not only are they bummed out, they're missing days of work, and we know they could eventually become detrimental to the culture of your organization. More Gallup data illustrates how very unhappy employees infuse negativity into the workplace. 63% of employees worldwide are not engaged. 63%, everybody. That is just huge. And more Gallup data basically is very powerful. It says that 24% are actively disengaged. They're unhappy, they're unproductive, and they're likely to spread negativity to coworkers. We know what that can do to company culture, and it ain't pretty, right? So like I said, this is likely not shocking to any of you, but knowing the critical nature of fostering well-being and engagement is a great way to bridge into workplace culture. And that is something I want to kind of dive into a little bit more. What is workplace culture exactly, right? I love personally to study and observe the importance of workplace culture. A culture is sometimes hard to define in words, but it's palpable when you visit or work there. Organizational culture is widely accepted as the collective values, norms, and beliefs of an organization, or basically how things are done around here. In 2015, Entrepreneur Magazine and Culture IQ took a deep dive into company culture with this definition: it's your story your company develops over time, narrated by your leaders, lived by your employees, and shared by all. I think that's a pretty all-encompassing definition. How's that? It's heavy stuff, but it's important to really think about that. It's lived by your employees. That's something that I want everyone to take away from this today. I mean, this is everything from dress code to office layout to leadership styles to perks. This matters in how an organization runs. Is it stuffy? Is it relaxed? Is it driven? Is it impersonal? Is it gossipy? Is it warm? And, it may be several of those things, right? But I want everyone to start tuning into the fact that culture is something that's real. I can imagine many of you can relate to some of these adjectives, right? Either nodding with pride or cringing at the cultural facets that can creep into an organization and erode relationships and, unfortunately, work ethic. But I'm not here today to discuss how a positive work culture is fostered, although I think it's important to understand. I just want all of us to think about how to build a workplace well-being program that matches the culture, right? Putting a cherry on top of a pickle doesn't exactly work, right? They're great separately, perhaps, but I highly encourage you to know your culture first and to ensure that whatever workplace wellness and well-being programs you introduce are a match. So I want to take a little time to talk about what it means to have a culture-first mentality. How can companies accomplish this mission? In theory, it's pretty simple, right? But in reality, I think it can be a challenge for many brands. Developing a culture-first mentality means focusing on employees' total quality of health. This includes physical, mental, social, emotional, and financial health. It's not just about convincing them to join a weight loss program or to complete an annual health reimbursement arrangement. It's about connecting with them in ways that put lifestyle changes within easy reach and encouraging them to support one another through this process of transformation. Creating a culture geared towards total quality of life requires solutions that are engaging, social, and fun, we hope, so your employees naturally want to do these on a daily basis. So let's move a little bit beyond traditional wellness boundaries by doing the following things. Here's some of the things we can do. You can connect participants with an available online platform. Your participants meaning your employees, right? You can provide anytime, and I'm using that in air quotes right now, anytime access to smart tools and resources that comfortably fit into an employee's world. Make it simple, make it interactive, make it rewarding to choose healthier options on a continual basis. So having this sort of culture-first mentality, I think, is a very important first step. There's obviously many ways to assess the culture of an organization. People have been talking about that for years now, right? There's some great tools, technologies, and surveys out there. Make sure you survey your people, though. And that's the one thing I think so many brands miss, is taking the pulse of the feelings about the company. What words, right? Go around, ask what words describe the day-to-day vibe of your organization. The approach and the results will be different for a small company, as it would with anyone in a large company, right? Everybody is working in such different ways now, right? I mean, we have a business full of telecommuters, global organizations. That's really what the future of work is right now. But if you're housed in one building and people aren't talking to one another, let's be honest, that is a bold sign of culture, and it's a red flag if people aren't talking to each other. What emotions are you seeing, right? Are people all in headphones? Are they glazed over a bit? Do you hear any joking or giggling? Maybe too much of that. These are all things you can do to really assess what your business culture is like in the real time. All of these things I want to just bring home to you can vary drastically from one workplace to another. So we don't have a, X plus Y equals Z equation here, right? I want you to really genuinely feel what your culture is like and know that no two organizations or no two people are alike. So talk about like a brilliantly simple concept. It's called a culture walk, and I'm really into it these days. I think it's, I know we're in an age where there's so much technology at our hands and social media, right? That sometimes we get lost in all the information. And one of the things I think you can do that's so simple is just literally learning a lot about your workplace culture by walking around and observing the obvious. How are desks and offices laid out? Is it in a way that fosters human interaction, or does it create silos? Do people have room to stretch and make a home for themselves, or is it impossible? Are people using standing desks? I'd be curious to know how many of you have a standing desk or a fit ball as a chair. Are the chairs even comfortable? Is there any art? What's posted in the common areas? Where is the kitchen? Where's the water cooler, right, that we hear so much about? Where do people congregate? Or do they? Do people communicate? Do they do it via email, Skype, Slack? Do they walk over and talk to you? These are all very, very important things that you're going to observe when you take that culture walk. When you ask how someone is doing, are people drab? Are they snarky? Are they peppy? And people are complex. I like to talk about this quite a bit, right? People are different, of course, on a Monday morning than they are on a Friday afternoon, and this is definitely going to sway your results. We're talking about humans here after all, come on, but we are looking for trends. So if you're not even looking or asking these questions, taking notes, then I would suggest this is a really good place for you to start. So I want to hear a little bit more from you here in the audience. I'm going to turn this on over to Mike, and we're gonna do the poll question right now.
Thinking about adjectives. Pick one of these adjectives to describe your corporate culture. Would you say it's supportive, stressful, indifferent, or silly and fun? Is there some other one that you would choose, some other adjective? Or really, you just don't know where to start in terms of picking an adjective to describe your workplace culture. So think about that for a moment. Go ahead and click a button and let us know what you think. We see your votes coming in. We've got nearly 900 people with us here today, and so the results are nice and varied, and seeing great results here. We've got 2/3 of you who have voted. So I'm going to go ahead here and bring this to a close, and let's see what we've got. The most commonly selected adjective is supportive. So that was about 35% of the audience. About 23% chose stressful as the most appropriate adjective. We've got about 18% that are choosing indifferent. And then silly and fun was only selected by about 4% of our audience. We've got about 16% who would choose something else if they had a chance, and about 4% that just don't have any idea. Megan?
Well, that's kind of interesting. It's so nice to see that there's so many people that feel like they're supported in their corporate culture. And not surprisingly, to me, actually, these results are not a surprise. Supportive, followed by stressful, followed by indifferent. And hey, congrats to all you guys who are being silly and fun. It is 4.1%, so I think we can improve there. But I would say that, these are very telling results. And the fact that I think a lot of people are pretty stressed out right now. No surprise. But there is support, and that's why we're taking a deeper look at culture today, right? All right, so why are we talking about all this fancy culture stuff? Why does it even matter to take stock of your corporate culture when bringing new well-being initiatives into the workplace? I think it may be obvious, but I want to revisit a few basics with you. I think success to any program when you're talking about technology and people and where they intersect depends on buy-in. And if a program feels like it's off the shelf or it was designed with a totally different demographic in mind, it's going to feel inauthentic. And that's kind of yucky right now. We don't want that. We want that to avoid that, right? Because when it happens and it feels inauthentic, buy-in plummets. And we know this because the Rand Corporation study that was done in 2013 found some really interesting data. They discovered that 85% of U.S. companies employing 1,000 people or more offer some sort of wellness program. This is great news, right? We're all like skipping down the street together, laughing. Maybe we're even being silly to all you 4.1%ers out there. But Gallup research shows that only 60% of U.S. employees are aware that their company even offers a wellness program. And only 40% of those who are aware of the program say they actually participate. Guess what? Now we've dropped that to only 24% of employees taking advantage of these programs. So I would posit that these figures would look completely different if these programs were better designed based on the cultures of an organization in which they were being implemented. I think internal marketing plays a huge part too. But, that's all right. We'll do that webinar another time. I just wanted you to kind of see that that's where I'm going, potentially, with this conversation. If you're in tech, if you're in food and beverage, higher education, or real estate, your days look dramatically different. Your goals, your customers, your employees, and schedules vary. This all tremendously matters in what works and what doesn't, right? All right, so let's talk a little bit about some fancy tools here. I'm kind of excited about this. So maybe some of you out there are already using Limeade, and likely some of you are not yet, right? But don't forget the importance and helpful nature of tools. We are very lucky. It's 2016. Let's embrace it, right? Let's take a deeper look. Integrated platforms are a great solution, allowing you to implement programs and track success. They can make it easier on anyone who's managing the program, but also more accessible for your employees. And don't ignore the fact that they also provide a way to track ROI, which is absolutely critical when reporting back to executives about the success of the program, right? So this is a really fun one, right? Wearables and devices and apps. Apps are a great way to track, motivate, and let somebody else do some of the back-end analytics. Some examples include Photocracy, Foodicate, Code, Nike Training Club, Pact, and Argus. So do some research. There's so much cool stuff out there. Even some crowdsourcing from employees would be really beneficial to see which one they all think is a really good culture fit for what they want to accomplish. Now, as far as wearables and devices, we're not just talking about pedometers from the early 90s here, people, right? We can track everything right now, from oxygen to blood pressure with fast-growing world of wearable technology. So there is a pretty cool little infographic here that illustrates the explosion of the industry. Options include smart glasses, smart watches, hearables, fitness and health trackers, even smart jewelry and smart fashion. According to Statista, the global wearables market is expected to reach a value of $19 billion in 2018, more than 10 times its value 5 years prior. According to Springbuck's report on what's trending in wellness in 2016, and this is according to the 2015 Healthiest Employer Strategic Assessment, by the way, 27% of organizations are using wearables. So that's encouraging. So data gathered from wearables can also help an organization make a business case for a wellness program or fine-tune one already in place. Wearables can provide employers with a vast amount of biometric data and help evaluate that ROI, but only if employees consent to share this information. So that's another really important thing I want everyone to keep in mind. Your employees need to be on board. This is a very, very important piece of all of this. You can have people provide their own data from their own wearables, but one step further is to provide them as a reward for being part of a larger wellness initiative. So I would recommend seeing if this is in your budget and if it's a fit for your culture. Obviously, those are two very important pieces to seeing something like this take hold and have some level of success. And here we go. Social media, right? There are very few corporate cultures now that wouldn't want a social media element. It's a great way to engage, to build community, to send updates, to invite people to events, ask questions, and so much more. In one of my recent Forbes articles, I shared a few of these facts, which I think are very telling right now. We're expected to have 2.5 billion social media users worldwide by 2018. And right now, 90% of adults aged 18 to 29 are using social media. Let's repeat that one more time, 90%. A solid one-third of all millennials say that it's their preferred channel for communicating with businesses. And their habits are not going to change. We've got a few more striking numbers here. Snapchat has 100 million plus reported users. Instagram, which I love Instagram, by the way, it's got 420 million. And even the lesser-known Flipboard, they're about 70 million and rising. Pew Research also states that 52% of online adults now use 2 or more social media sites. 90% of adults aged 18 to 29 use social media, and 35% of those over 65 do. Statistica states that 70% of the U.S. population has at least one social networking profile. So, you see why social is going to reach and engage a whole lot of your target audience? I promise you, everybody, it's super important. All right, so I had some fun thinking of a few examples for a few popular platforms. These are intended to just kind of get your juices flowing today. So I want to run some stuff by you all, and I'd love to hear feedback from you at some point. I mean, we've got so many options right now in terms of ways to engage your employees, right? You can have a Facebook group for running, for yoga, for lunch walks. If you have like-minded people who are part of a group that do yoga together, maybe they walk at lunch together, or they're training for a marathon together, why not a Facebook group where they can interact and nail down meeting spots and times? You could use Twitter. You could tweet health-related facts and articles. I love Twitter. I'm on there all the time, right? It's a great way to create some sort of a hashtag. Maybe it's a wellness hashtag that aligns with your wellness initiatives, and actually you can use it, and I would encourage you to use it. So you can't just get on Twitter and not use it. That's the secret. Any of these platforms, really. Have fun with the pace and possibilities of Twitter. And consider this. As of the first quarter of 2016, Twitter averaged at 310 million monthly active users. Why not use Instagram and Snapchat to share pictures? Maybe you have active leaders. Maybe you want to show that off about your culture. Maybe you're active as an employee. So these two platforms have my complete interest lately. I mean, I've been on Instagram for a while, and I am falling more and more in love with it every day, and I certainly am on Snapchat as well, and really doing a lot of listening on Snapchat primarily right now, but I have a sense I'll be conquering Snapchat pretty soon for you all, and I am actively there, at Megan Ambiro, by the way. So visual sharing is not new, and it's so very new at the same time. That's why I find it so fascinating. There's also Pinterest, right? I mean, is anyone out there using Pinterest to collect infographics, inspirational quotes, healthy recipes? Pinterest is an interesting beast. With the right attention, it's a curator's dream. It needs to be owned by somebody, though, who has a vision for its possibilities, and then have it open for any size group to pin their thoughts, quotes, pictures. And I really like the idea of it being a hub for healthy recipes and stress-relieving techniques. The bottom line here is these are just ideas. It's really important for you to use social media strategically. Have somebody or a group of people own it, right? Use great content. Keep it updated. Keep it fresh. Keep it on point. All of this matters so very much. All right, so I am an analytics geek, everybody. Surprise, surprise. I'm not going to go too deep into it today, but I am a little bit of a data junkie around the edges. So I want to at least acknowledge the importance of them. No matter where you are in your wellness programming, there's always new ways to slice and dice data, and I highly encourage you to do so. Think strategically about analytics and build them into your program, and think about cultural analytics too. Be sure to look ahead. This is so very important when you're thinking about analytics and strategy. Looking ahead 5 to 10 years, thinking about longitudinal data that can show you what works and what doesn't. How the program affected retention, right? What worked for different departments? How it affected the actual health of your employees? And how productivity and potentially business outcomes were positively impacted. So some analytics to consider tracking include, of course, benefit cost is critical. Cost savings is huge to executives, right? So give some thought to these population sets. Compare and contrast people who are actively participating in your program and those who are not. And then there's the fun yet impactful stats like total miles walked or run, number of external clubs begun, number of pounds lost, and so much more. Of course, it should be noted that a very important element of health analytics is patient privacy. It would be a culture lose if you violate those privacy laws, as we know. So have fun with it. And when executives want to talk about ROI, you can kind of do that and do it with confidence, I hope. Okay, so this is a very important part of all of this, right? You kind of can't have one without the other. In 2016, a large portion of Americans still live and thrive on the business treadmill, feeling like you can out-busy somebody else. And if you do that, you win. Hours, income, material belongings are measurable ways to illustrate success. I'm not saying everybody is like this, but I do think it's still an epidemic, and our country has a stress problem. If we acknowledge this, it's important to acknowledge that personal well-being often is put aside in order to achieve all these fancy things, right? So whether it be newfound flexibility in schedules, or paradigm shifts about what's important in life, or a whole host of other things that are introduced by your leaders. They're introduced by your executives, right? So you want to be able to share that message ideally, that we can find happiness and holistic health in many ways, and measuring how busy or stressed out we are is not what we're about. You know, I mean, I think you kind of have to really go deep and think about this a little bit more. Really critical. So the age-old saying never goes away, and that's for good reason. If executives aren't participating at some level, that gives employees permission to basically opt out, to slack off. And I'm going to take this a step further today. Not only should they be visibly participating, I think the right executive, and think personality and visibility, should also be enthusiastic about it, right? It needs to be authentic. But leaders do set the tone for this culture, as we've discussed, and they can absolutely set the tone for a workplace well-being program. They don't have to be perfectly fit or dye their hair green if goals aren't met, but I highly encourage you to show executives the power they have over the success of the program. A successful strategy should incorporate top-down healthy goals as foundational elements. For example, It's essential to encourage nutritious eating habits and regular physical activity. But it's also important for employers to demonstrate commitment to those goals by offering things like healthy cafeteria options and access to on-site workout facilities, so employees can easily integrate these choices into their daily routine. In addition, you may want to consider offering classes that help employees establish and manage a 401k. Maybe they can learn a little bit more about smart retirement savings and these strategies. This is something you can do to demonstrate a deeper commitment to workforce well-being. The result, you ask? The more employers invest in employees' personal and professional growth, the more committed, engaged, and productive these employees will be. In short, a holistic approach is a wise investment in future business performance. Because this is an investment the company is making, executives have the ability to impact the ROI, because really, that's what it's all about. So traditional wellness programs often struggle because they overlook a critical issue. Telling employees how to act is not the same thing as empowering employees to make their own choices. By doing this, you're supporting them along the way. So this is why we're here today, to not necessarily say that if you have a predominantly serious, buttoned-up culture, then only a certain kind of program will succeed, but to acknowledge that some workplaces just won't embrace programs that are completely different than their culture. So just for fun, let's just draw a silly scenario, right? Picture a financial services office full of highly scheduled men and women who wear professional attire and work long hours. Do you think an unscheduled lunchtime scavenger hunt all over downtown would be successful? I'm thinking probably not. Maybe a quarterly contest, though, wearing wearable technology could be a hoot. Ask everyone to throw $5 into a pot and capitalize on the competitive nature of the culture. Maybe you want to have a planned happy hour, and you can announce the winners, which everybody will put into their iCal or their calendars ahead of time. Now we're talking, right? And if another culture is dog-friendly workplace, why not schedule lunchtime dog walks? Invite executives to come along, get some exercise, and build relationships. In a national or international company, you could utilize a platform like Limeade has that can bring people together to improve their well-being. Take some pulse surveys. See what kinds of initiatives would make their lives better. What's missing? What motivates them? What would make them brag to their friends that my employer does this? These very simple questions could throw traditional workplace wellness concepts out the window and bring to light custom ideas that can transform the entire workforce and obviously the culture. So let's go through 8 basic steps to tie a wellness program into the culture. Step 1, you want to assess and acknowledge the culture. We've already addressed this. So take assessment surveys, use tools and technology, and acknowledge what you find. Step 2, see what changes need to be made anyway. This is a great opportunity to see what's broken and what changes can be part of this initiative and weave it into the plan. Step 3, work closely with executives to build a program that enhances and fits the culture. Get those executives on board and build something that supports what you've found. Step 4, kick off the program in a way that engages and enthuses the people of the organization. Make it exciting and fun. If you don't start with enthusiasm, you may lose people before you even get started. Step 5, you want to be overt about some of the decisions made based on culture. We know we have stressful jobs, so let's let off some steam together. Or it's too bad that we can't all take walks together because of our locations, but this tool is going to be a great way to have a fun, complete, and hold each other accountable, of course, which we know you enjoy. Step 6, be consistent in your messaging. This is just an important element. I can't stress it enough. In any successful initiative, you absolutely want to be consistent. Step 7, you want to do periodic evaluations of the culture. It may very well change based on this program. And step 8, adjust accordingly. What's working, what's not working. So here's a few key takeaways from today's presentation. Take the time to assess your current culture. You can set goals for changes that can be made or need to be made. Be honest about your overall culture and use tools and technology to take a real snapshot. Build a program that aligns with your culture, your attitudes, and most importantly, your reality. Don't build a program around somebody else's culture. It's not going to work. Think strategically about analytics. It's too easy to access analytics to ignore them. They're impactful, and any wellness program absolutely critical. Use the tools that will help you succeed. And last but not least, executive buy-in and participation is absolutely essential. Okay, so let's jump over to some Q&A, shall we? I'm going to turn this back over to the moderator. Thank you all so much for being here. This has been such a fun topic. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you. We are going to turn to our audience questions in just a moment. But first, Sherm would like to thank Limeade for sponsoring today's webcast and helping with this series of programs for the HR community. Limeade is a corporate wellness technology company. With Limeade, employers can reach more people with culturally relevant and engaging programs, inspire change in health and well-being with the most personalized experience, and move the needle on key performance metrics connected to well-being. To learn more about Limeade, visit online at Limeade, that's limeade.com. All right, let's turn to some of the many questions we've got coming in from the audience, and we'll just start here. Audience member asks, what is the best way to propose a wellness program for a company that may be skeptical or that has never had one?
Well, I think, somebody needs to own it, right? Somebody needs to say, I want to do this. That's really the first step. I think so many organizations set up a Facebook page and claim a Twitter handle and then drop the ball. So you really want to just start by saying you're committed to it and delegate accordingly.
And another audience member, again, just kind of for laying the groundwork here, asks, what is the responsibility of the employee for well-being as well as the employers?
I would say it's as important as the employer. It's really, this is one of those things, when you talk about well-being and culture, it's equal. It's as much on the employer as it is on the employees to actually participate and build meaning around what they want. Let's not forget who this is supposed to serve. It's supposed to serve the employees and the culture.
Another question here from our audience about company culture. Audience member writes, we have a very disparate workforce. What would you recommend instead of a culture walk around the building?
This is really where technology comes into play. Find the right tool to survey employees. Be sure to tap into their true feelings with carefully worded questions, right? It's great if we have data available to us, but if people aren't being honest or real or authentic, it's kind of bunk. So be creative in the ways you assess how people really feel on a day-to-day basis. There's some great vendors and tools out there who can really help in this area. So, great question.
Continuing with audience questions, another audience member asks, are there situations where executives are in denial about a company's culture?
Oh, absolutely. Every single day. We see it all around us, right? Executives are human. They're people too. And they can often get caught seeing the organization only through their own lens. That's why surveys and tools are really, really important. They can often, make things seem rosier than they really are, because that's what the executives want to hear, right? They may also think they're doing the right things because it's trendy or cool, but find out that the employee basically disagrees. So it's absolutely critical to be able to present factual information to executives when making any case, especially when you're talking about culture.
Another audience member writes, I find that culture at my company differs greatly between departments. How would you suggest assessing or unifying different cultures under the same wellness program?
Well, I think it all starts by taking a culture walk, like I talked about, getting everybody in the same room and communicating. It all starts with communication. It's absolutely essential because the marketing department may have a very different view on culture than the software technology group does, you know? So communicate. Start the conversation. It sounds simple, but sometimes it's more complex than you think.
Another audience member asks, are there any workplace cultures where a well-being program would simply fail?
Wow. I hope not. But I think some cultures are tougher than others as far as drumming up participation. But it's worth cracking that nut, right? And that's where honesty comes into play. If you build an awesome program, but it doesn't match the identity and the culture of your employees, it's going to be destined to struggle. I think a lot of brands still struggle with this today. But if you craft your program with your culture in mind, I would hope that failure just isn't an option. I would hope that, you would make it a priority. That's really what this comes down to.
And another audience member has written in asking, how do you manage to keep a wellness program going when company times are tough, huge budget cuts, layoffs, and so forth?
Like anything, with humans love consistency and they love communication and engagement. So, let's not forget a lot of these platforms and social media tools that we're using and communication modules, it's free. So sometimes it's not really about cost in the end. It's just about being open to communicating and using tools, right? I mean, employees can start the initiative. Let's not forget that too, right? If there's no budget but your employees feel passionate about it, well, start something, There's no excuse. I think everyone should just get going and communicate. That's my vote, right?
Some questions here about engaging and engaging. Audience member asks, when I review our mid-sized company, I find some departments are really communicative and engaged and others are not. So I have a mixed bag, and I'm not sure how to get other managers to get their employees more engaged.
That's a great question. I think it comes down to leadership for sure, and really getting that on leadership's radar. I think managers really need to manage and create mentorships, and manage mentors. I think creating mentors underneath managers is a really helpful tool. So you're never going to solve all the problems of this in one day, but I think that that's one really important area for it, and I think just talking, creating these talking points is another really important methodology that you can use. So again, we have a theme here, right? We have a theme of communication and being willing to say something's failing. It's not working. How do we improve, right?
Another audience member writes in, we do a variety of challenges and gamification relating to wellness, but it seems like most of the participants are younger workers. Are there initiatives in your experience that help draw in older workers as well as younger?
Well, if they're asking the right questions, they will be inclusive, we hope, right? So really making everybody give data on how we can do this better, right? Taking these methodologies and saying it can't just be to one or two generations. I mean, it's a multi-generational workplace, so I would hope that we'd be speaking to different generations and giving them choices on how to opt in to specific things that they're interested in, I mean, I'm not surprised to hear that, but on the same token, I know many of a baby boomer out there and even a Gen Xer who, they'd love to be part of some of these initiatives, right? So really building these bridges between generations is so critical here, and not making it seem like it's one group over the other or two,
We put together here a couple of questions that came in kind of in the same ballpark. One audience member writes, We have a workforce that has little access to technology, including 400 plus workers on rotating shifts. What's the best way to get them engaged? Another audience member writes, please comment on the use of well-being electronic tools in a culture, both inside and outside of work, that is so overwhelmed with electronic information.
Well, I think, you don't need technology to engage and communicate, right? I think you could be sending thank you notes, something as simple as saying thank you, creating posters, creating visuals, calling out members of your staff who, are doing great work. It doesn't have to use technology necessarily. It certainly makes it easier as you scale a larger organization, but there's a lot of different ways you can start these programs, right? And again, it comes down to communicating, having meetings, all of those things that fall under the communication bucket. And consistency. Making it a regular thing to have meetings about this thing, right?
More questions here about wellness and wellness awareness. Actually, we've received a couple like this where folks have written in asking, could you describe the difference between wellness and well-being?
Well, I think there's a lot of different ways to describe wellness versus well-being. I think well-being has to do with, your health, right? And your financial state, your work, well-being, right? These are all things that kind of fall under that well-being umbrella. How emotionally you feel, right? And wellness is a little bit more of that macro view of the result of having good well-being, right?
Another audience member asks, what do you think is the key to keeping a wellness program front and center for employees?
Again, it comes down to consistency. I think having a quarterly event is a good idea. This could be, a meeting or a walk or a lunch where you celebrate people's successes. You survey employees, right, on what's being effective. You build enthusiasm. You do something. And also, like I mentioned with social media, you fill in the rest of the time with fresh, engaging ideas and content. So keeping it fresh, keeping it timely, and being consistent. You'd be surprised.
Let's close here with one final question from our audience member who asks, when it comes to social media, what are some best practices you would recommend to support our wellness initiatives?
Well, I think I've said it before, but it probably bears repeating. Somebody needs to own it, right? I think so many people set up pages and they say, I want to go and do social media, but without a clear goal and strategy in mind. So you want to kind of have somebody take editorial control of it and be consistent and be active. You want to plan ahead, right? You want to schedule posts or have an editorial calendar. On the fly works, but I think strategic planning along with that is also really great. I love social media. Have fun with it. It should definitely be engaging, and it should never be a one-way conversation.
All right, thank you. With that question and answer, we are going to bring today's program to a close. A couple of final thanks. First to our presenter, Megan M. Biro, for the insight she provided in today's program. And our thanks to you in the audience for participating today and for choosing SHRM for HR Webcasts. That concludes today's program.